Welcome back to the Forensics Detailing channel. Today we're covering the subject of new car detailing and how to protect it. Welcome back to the channel, guys. So we're covering the subject today of new car detailing, and this is something I've been chatting to Reg about for the last couple of days because he wants to know. He's got a new kind of M140. He wants to, it's looking great, but he wants it to be really kind of immaculate. The point where you first buy it is the point where you want to feel like you've got something which is absolutely at its best, and then you want to kind of keep it there, which is completely fine, and I would be exactly the same. I think most people are. But on the flip side, it's best to remember you're going to own the car for a few years. There are times when it's going to get plastered and filthy. It's going to take a hammering from being driven. That's part of the thing with cars, isn't it? Using them out on the road, hurling along at very high speeds through all sorts of stuff. So they do deteriorate. A bit like us, they're not built to last forever. But on the flip side, detailing is all about keeping a nice car, isn't it? And doing the best you can with the tools we've got available to us to maintain our cars properly. So we're going to talk a little bit about what you can do with a new car to really kind of get it nice and keep it nice. Now, the first thing, there's 5 little areas in this video that I want to talk about. The first thing is the stuff that's external to detailing that often gets spoke about a lot. That when you buy a new car to order, it's a good idea generally. And I know 99% of the population doesn't do this, and the dealer might look at you a little bit funny if you do this, but to insist that all the factory kind of wrap and protection they put on these cars at the manufacturer, and then they send them off to the dealerships, and the dealerships then take all this kind of protective coating off. You get the little kind of polystyrene covers over the door edges so nothing gets damaged. All of that stuff is a really great idea, but ideally you want to be the guy that's kind of taking all of that stuff off rather than the dealer, if you're into all of this. Now, the dealer, like I said, might look at you funny. The dealers want to take it off and get the car nice and clean and prepared for you, and that's with good intent. They don't want to sell you a car you're disappointed with. But on the flip side, as we all know, if you're really into cleaning your cars, you know, following all this safe wash process and all that, it's best to kind of do it all yourself. There is also another argument that the cars can come out of the factory with perhaps defects in the paintwork that haven't been caught up during the manufacturing process, you know, because they will typically try and inspect the cars and, you know, wet sand out any defects and nibbing of dust specks and bogies and overruns, all that sort of stuff. And that goes on. But sometimes they'll turn up at the dealership with some of those sanding marks and stuff still left in them, and the dealers will probably quite often try and sort those problems out for you. But the first key point is, ideally, if you're into detailing, you have all the machine polishes and you want to do all this yourself, or you want to get a detailer to do it, insist on all of the factory wrap stuff being left on the car, that the car is not clean, that no protective products, tyre dressings or waxes or glass sealants or anything is used on the car. In fact, that it's basically untouched. Insist on it in a nice way, because I don't think there's any need to start getting a bit, you know, over the top with the dealer, because I think 99% of the dealers will have had this request now a fair few times, and they'll probably be more than happy with it. But you just want to make sure that they know that it's a really important point for you. And if you turn up to pick up the car and it's been washed and waxed and all that sort of stuff, you're more than likely to be rejecting it. I think is probably the best way to go. The next thing, what you actually do when you've got this car back and you've taken all that kind of stuff off, all of the kind of, you know, protective films off it and all that sort of stuff, what do you actually do with it? Well, it is the same, obviously the same sort of processes apply to what you do with a new car than what you would do to a car that would turn up for you to kind of detail. The good thing is with new cars, it is like generally 100 times easier. But the 4 main areas that you're going to be kind of focused on or considering on, one of them is the same with all new cars, is that there's likely to be dirt on them, even if they've not been driven and they've been transported. There's going to be dust on them and stuff like that. So they're going to need to be safe washed and cleaned properly. So you can, you know, the last thing you want to do is get the new car, you know, and on your drive and you get a bucket and go out there and just, you know, clean it really aggressively with a sponge or something like that, you know, and inflict a ton of damage and then think that it was the dealership that did it when it's you that did it. So safe washing your car with a good technique, a good pre-wash, is what we did with Reg's car, just to make sure we weren't actually putting any damage in it when we go on to have a look at the actual state of the car. Now, the second thing, as well as dirt, you get kind of contamination that is on cars. And this is a big thing with new cars, is that typically they've got quite a lot of contamination on them. Now, Reg's car was pre-registered, so it done 17 miles when he picked it up, which is, you know, he's buying it pre-registered new, but not buying it built to order. So he didn't get the option of having all that factory stuff on it, and it's done 17 miles. I think he said the guy went and put some petrol in it for him, which is nice. Now, the car had tons of contamination on it. Now, the first thing after you've cleaned that car is it's always worth checking for the contamination. And after you've washed it, if you're going to feel the paintwork, you're going to really need to dry it off. It's harder to feel contamination if the paint's all nice and wet and slippy. So you want the paint kind of dry to be able to feel it. But typically, another good way to see the level of contamination is to use the reactive fallout removers and spray them on little parts of the car. Now, with cars that pick up fallout contamination from driving, you get most of it behind the wheels. So behind the front wheels, behind the rear wheels, and on the rear section of the car, seems to kick up most of the contamination. Reg's car, we tested it, actually had a ton or a lot of fallout remover on it, but it was consistent all over the car. So there was no extra fallout behind the wheels. There was just as much fallout on the roof and the hood as there was in all the places where it builds up from the brake discs and driving. So it's probably been stored somewhere where for whatever reason, metal contamination has fallen onto that car. And I don't know how that's happened, but there was a ton of it in there. So fallout remover is actually a really good way to gauge how much kind of fallout contamination in the car. There was very little kind of sap or any other dirt contamination kind of stuck onto the clear coat. But the bottom line is there was so much fallout. These chemical products have got autoclave magma. We've talked about them before. They dissolve the oxide layer of the rust. And when you dissolve that away, it makes the embedded kind of iron particle a lot smaller, so it kind of falls off of the paintwork easier. So after you've used them, you could go over them gently with a kind of wash mitt, or you could pressure wash them off if you like to sort of blast the chunks of contamination off of the car. Now the thing is, they don't get it all out. They can help dislodge it, but they remove a lot of it, which is a good thing, and they're worthwhile products. If ever you don't think they work and you've got loads of contamination on your car, and you sometimes can see the little spots of fallout, just try and just pick it off the car. And that's a faux pas, but you know, the world's not going to end if you're prepping it for a polish. And most of the time they're stuck on there and they won't come off. You spray some fallout on them and they bleed off. More often than not, they'll just fall off of the car. So these products work, in my opinion. In fact, they're quite important products. But the counter argument is, if you're not going to get it all off with the chemical decontamination and you're going to be claying anyway, is it worth using them? And also, if you're claying, you're going to be polishing either way. So there is a counter argument that perhaps you don't need them, but I like them and I think they're useful, and I like them in the wheel cleaners as well, for rightly or wrongly. So checking for decontamination is the most important point that I want to get across in this video, actually, if you're buying a new car. And my suggestion is, more often than not, you will find that there is fallout contamination in those cars that will require a chemical decontamination, a clay. And then once you've done that, you're going to need to go on and polish. So very important, that. So moving on to the next point, polishing the car. Now, once you've cleaned and deconned it, and you can get the car in and inspect it, that's a very important thing to actually go around and eyeball this car and see what you're dealing with. Looking for any obvious kind of major marks from the manufacturing process that have been missed, so sanding marks and stuff like that shouldn't be there, that the dealer might have taken out. Okay, now you've asked the dealer not to touch it, so the net result is you might have some marks in there that you need to take out. Now that's not a problem if you're into your kind of polishing and stuff like that. If you are into your polishing, then it kind of takes us back a few steps to the beginning, saying, well, should you trust the dealer to actually prepare the car for you? Maybe you should, but the more you're into this, the more likely you're going to want to do it yourself, because perhaps you can spend more time on it and maybe even do a better job. Anyway, so the next thing is you are going to need to inspect that paintwork like any car to see what you're dealing with. More often than not, with new cars, you are not going to be needing to do to cut loads of clear coat on them and go in with heavy compounds and stuff like that. More often than not, you're going to be needing to take out the clay bar marring that you might have put in there, or the marring from clay clothing it or whatever, and perhaps there's a possibility that there might be some marks in the manufacturer now. I don't want to spook you on that sort of stuff, but there's always a possibility, and that's why the inspection is always important. With Reg's particular car, I think it's been washed once. There are signs of light scratches from the wash process. Like I say, he bought it pre-registered. It needs decontaminating anyway, and it doesn't need heavy polishing. So we're probably just going to do a light polish on that to take out some of those very fine scratches that are very hard to spot in white paint. And then after that, we'll move on to the kind of what we're going to do in terms of protection. So it's the same, like I say, cleaning, decontamination, and then machine polishing, the kind of three fundamental steps of getting the car nice. And then after that, looking to protect it. Now, protection, this is a really personal thing, guys. The big questions you've got to ask yourself are, what particular areas on the car do you personally want to protect? Because there are protection products for absolutely virtually everything now in your car. There'll be one for the air soon. And now some of those I really kind of value and I think they're important. Paintwork protection, I can see the benefits of it, especially in terms of kind of cleaning, trying to dry a car with no wax or sealant on it and stuff like that. The water just never really comes off of the paintwork. The cloths stick into the paintwork and you're trying to dry it. So car protection products are fantastic, and you have the choice of kind of sealants, wax and ceramics and stuff like that we've covered on this channel. But beyond just what format of product you're going to pick for your car, you've got to decide what you want to protect on your car. So for example, you can get specific products for alloy wheel protections, specific products to protect kind of trim, specific products for glass, specific products for kind of paintwork, protection products as well for your leather. So as always, you need to do your research on that. We've done videos on all of this sort of stuff. What do I do on my M140? Well, I'm obviously very interested in protecting the paintwork and getting that nice, so I'm planning on polishing it, been planning to do it for ages. So I'm going to be obviously worried about paintwork, polishing that to a high standard, and I'm going to use a ceramic coating on them because I like them, but you know, I like the other products as well, but I want the ceramic in there for that extra kind of durability and kind of protection, and all of the ceramic kind of products, accompanying products, I like it. I am definitely going to be protecting alloy wheels, and I would recommend, even if you don't use ceramics for your paintwork, which you don't have to, you know, if you keep a clean car, wash it safely, coat of wax is lovely and there's some good sealants. But for alloy wheels, I really recommend ceramics quite heavily, because you have to clean alloys quite aggressively to get all that stuff out of them. And I think the alloy, the dirt repellency of the ceramics really helps. Well, I've noticed it helping anyway. And it just seems to make maintaining the alloy a hell of a lot easier. So I think ceramics are the way to go with alloy wheels, and if you're putting them on the wheels, you should probably put them on the brake calipers as well, because the finish on the brake calipers gets hammered from all of the kind of brake dust and all that sort of stuff. I'm actually a fan of the exterior trim coatings. They're a bit of a pain to put on, but once you've put them down, you know that the ceramic's probably going to give you a year or maybe longer or whatever, you will see the benefits. And I'm seeing the benefits when I'm going in and doing my pre-washing in the arches and seeing like all of the dirt kind of falling off of the arch as well. So I think they're worth it as well. And they're not particularly difficult to apply on your scuttle and your trim panels and that. They don't take long. So I like the ceramic coatings for exterior trim as well. Glass is a part of the car that I don't use any kind of protective products on, because I'm not sure the glass needs protection, so nothing's going to protect it from getting whacked by stone chips and stuff like that. Really what you're doing when you put those products on there is you're adding a kind of hydrophobic effect to the glass, and if you value that, that's a reason to do glass protection. But I don't value the water kind of flying off of the glass that much for me. So it's up to you whether or not you want to do glass protection. Very important one that I think you should definitely be doing, and we've done it on Reg's car, is if you have leather seats. I think it's really important straight out the box when the car is nice and new, to just give them a light wipe down and then put a protective product on there, not a conditioner or anything like that, but a product that's going to help with friction wear and dye transfer, like I've talked about on the channel. And I use Colour Lock Shield because I've seen it and tested it, you know, on a proper machine, and I know that without it, the leather is more vulnerable to kind of friction wear and dye transfer. And just by wiping this stuff over it, doesn't alter the finish at all. You know, completely adds no gloss, but does help protect it from wearing out. So we put that on Reg's car, and hopefully he'll see the benefits. In fact, I've given him a bottle of it and just said clean it with the cleaner and top up the protection every 2 or 3 months, and particularly on those bolster and contact areas, and the driver's seat in particular, and that will really help maintain your leather. So that is all coming down into personal preference, guys, on protection, but definitely as a bare minimum, get some protection on your paintwork and your alloys and your leather would be my recommendation. The other one to consider is perhaps if your car is outside in the sun all the time, that a nice dressing, you know, that meets your requirements. If you don't want a glossy dressing, then a matte dressing, but something with UV protection in it. From coming back from Spain, you know, on holiday out there, and seeing what all the dashboards in the cars are like, you know, after probably as little as 4 or 5 year old car, where the dash is just taking a hammering from the sun. Sun really hammers surfaces, so I think UV protection can be really beneficial. But my car, I'm in the UK, it's kept in the garage virtually all of the time, so really I've got no dressings on my dashboard at the moment, and I don't really need one at the moment. If it was an old hammered dressing dashboard, it can benefit from a dressing, but this is a new car. So again, a lot of this stuff is optional, guys. I'm just sort of reeling off my thoughts on it. So in summary, what you really do with a new car, unfortunately, you think it would be immaculate and then you just got to put a wax on it and keep it nice. Well, no, actually, I think you've got to clean it very carefully, decontaminate it, inspect it, polish it, and then put the protection on as per your requirements for the part of the car that you need. That's the most important thing. Touching back on the point that we raised at the start of the video, it's like I say, it's really understandable that when you get something new and you spend a lot of money on it, you can get really worried. But like I say, cars, it's a long haul. The best thing you can do with your car after you've got it to this state when it's new and it's protected is try and clean it as often as you can, really, and gently as well, not going in heavy-handed with anything, whether it's paintwork or interiors. So that you do less cleaning, but perhaps clean it more often, which isn't going to work for everybody, but that's how I try and do it. And just try and, you know, those surfaces on all of your cars, try and treat them and handle them reasonably carefully, and I think that will pay dividends in the long term. So that was it, guys, a quick video on new car washing. Let me know if I've covered anything here that I've kind of missed. So I've got a good idea now what we need to do with Reg's. And like I said, we've decontaminated it and stuff like that, but it's going to need a full clay bar. And then Reg wants to go down the ceramic route, so I've recommended him, I've got a whole ton of ceramics in here, but I'm going to be using this amethyst quartz. I've used it once before, it's just a single coating that I can put on that is quite easy to apply, that is important for me. And I know it will do 6 months because I've had it on test panels, so I'm pretty sure it will live up to its durability claims. And they have a primer polish as well, and a sort of like maintenance product as well, so that's going to go on. The only other thing to mention is I've been testing out some of these auto glym products. They released a whole new load of products, so a fallout remover, this magma stuff, which is a low, it doesn't stink like the other ones, you know, it doesn't smell nice, but it doesn't have that real intense rotten egg kind of smell. You can just get it there in the background. It's got a bit of scent with it. So they're using like a low, there's a word for it, a low odour version of it or something like that. Lit up all the fallout on Reg's car, you know, which helps the indication, the purple is what you want to see, and the speed of the reaction and all that indicates that it's kind of, all the purple is the rust turning into iron glycolic oxide, which then dissolves in the water. That's the purple stuff. So the more purple you get and the quicker you get it is indicative of the product performing well. And I had to kind of dig that out of the memory bank. I've not done the full forensic thing with this on my bag of rust that I've got in there, FE203 or whatever it is. But it worked well on the on Reg's car, so that's good stuff, and it doesn't smell too much. Also, let it dry in the sun. Whenever you let these fallout removers dry, you can suddenly panic because they go kind of white and stuff like that. All of the components are water soluble, so usually when they do dry, you can rinse them off, but you want to avoid letting them dry. I let this bake out on the panel for about 10 minutes and it just came off okay. So that's one of the things you get with Autoglym products. They test them to hell and back to make sure you can't, not much can go wrong, you know, in untrained hands, because they sell them in Halfords. You know, you've got a lot of professionals that know what they're doing kind of using them, but you've also got a lot of guys that are just going in there and kind of buying products, so they have to be very careful with making sure you can't have any adverse effects. So next one is that snow foam, sort of foaming pre-wash Polar Blast. Thick, nice, decent amount of cleaning power on it. The panels on Reg's car were clean, but the alloys were caked in brake dust, and this seemed to have was sort of pulling quite a lot of the black brake dust out of the alloys, so I was quite impressed with this. For me to recommend any snow foam, price has to come into it. This 2.5 litre bottle of concentrate is 16 quid, which is actually pretty good value as well. So I don't think there's anything you're not going to like about that, but I've only used it twice. I've used it once on mine as well. So a very nice thick snow foam that is. And their active insect remover. Now I know very little about bug removers because of the fact that I just don't have them in my arsenal. It's not much of a problem for me. I pre-wash the car and I pressure wash them off. Sometimes there's some little bits left behind, and now I will just typically go over those with the Detail Factory kind of brush, which is, I think, is better than kind of pinning them with a wash mitt and sort of working that wash mitt over the surface. You just gently brush them off with this thing, and it's so soft. So this is an important tool for taking off bugs off my car generally. But what I did with this is I just sprayed this directly onto the kind of bug splatter, let it sit there for about 30-45 seconds, and then went back over with the Detail Factory brush and just rinsed the kind of product off as I'm going along, and it seemed to work. So a lot of people message me about bug splatter products. Maybe at some point on the channel, you know, we can look at them and try and compare them. I don't know if this is relatively good or bad, but it works. It seems to be a problem for quite a lot of people. So maybe it's an area we can go into and look at. It's just, I'm just trying to think, how the hell am I going to test that? It could be like firing dead flies at the sort of wall and then trying to test them on that. I don't know. We'll think about that later on. So that is the Autoglym Active Insect Remover. It's not like a mineral spirit based thing as far as I know. It's a sort of foamy detergent type product with it sort of smells of citrus. So I think it's probably you know, it's probably citrus or water based or something like that. So it's not a mineral spirit thing. So it's just a quick mention of those particular Autoglym products and the Bright Max stuff we're going to be putting on the car. So thank you very much for watching, guys. I will see you on the next video on the Forensics Detailing channel. Bye for now.